I was 67 when my son sat across from me in my own kitchen, using that careful voice people reserve for children and the confused, and said, "Dad, you're getting forgetful." The way his darted to his wife, the way she nodded with practiced sympathy, told me everything I needed to know. They thought I was slipping. They were counting on it. But I'd spent 43 years as an aerospace engineer. My job was precision, documentation, triple-checking calculations where a decimal point meant the difference between orbit and disaster. I didn't forget. I archived. The morning had started ordinary enough. Coffee at 6. The newspaper spread across the same oak table where my late wife Sarah used to correct our son's homework. The house still smelled faintly of her lavender sachets, though she'd been gone 3 years. I'd learned to live with ghosts. What I hadn't learned was how to live with vultures circling while I was still breathing. My son Derek arrived without calling first. Lately, he'd developed this habit of just appearing, his key turning in the lock as if the house had already transferred hands. His wife Jennifer followed, her heels clicking against the hardwood with the rhythm of impatience. "Morning, Dad," Derek said. "Too bright, too careful." Jennifer placed a folder on the table. Sleek, expensive, the kind consultants use when they're about to recommend downsizing your entire department. "We've been researching," she said, her smile tight enough to crack, "and we found some wonderful senior living communities." Senior living, the phrase people use when they mean warehousing. "I'm living just fine," I said, not looking up from the sports section. "Dad," Derek's voice dropped into that patient tone again, "you're getting forgetful. Last month you couldn't remember where you put your keys. I'd put them in my jacket pocket because it was raining and I didn't want to dig through my jeans while carrying groceries. I'd found them in 30 seconds, but Derek had watched me search, and apparently, 30 seconds was enough to diagnose dementia. "The house is too much for you," Jennifer added. "All these stairs, the yard work, the maintenance. What if you fall and we're not here? What if?" The favorite weapon of people who want to make fear feel like love. I folded my newspaper slowly. "I appreciate your concern," I said, each word measured. "But I'm managing." "Are you?" Derek leaned forward. "Because the neighbors mentioned you left the garage door open all night last Tuesday." I had. Because I was varnishing a bookshelf and needed ventilation. But explaining seemed pointless when they'd already decided on the narrative. Jennifer opened the folder. Inside were glossy brochures. Sunset Gardens, Silver Horizons, Golden Years Estates, names designed to make dying sound like a vacation. "These places have everything," she said. "Meal plans, activities, healthcare on site. You wouldn't have to worry about anything. Wouldn't have to worry. Wouldn't have to choose. Wouldn't have to exist as anything but a name on a medication chart. Just visit one," Derek pressed. "What could it hurt?" I looked at my son. Really looked at him. Somewhere in the past decade, he'd learned to need things from me without actually needing me. His tie was expensive. His watch was new. His mortgage, I knew from comments he'd dropped, was substantial. "I'll think about it," I said. Relief washed over both their faces. They thought I'd caved. They didn't know that "I'll think about it" is what engineers say when they're about to start a very thorough analysis. After they left, I sat in the quiet and let my mind work the way it had for 4 decades. Problem identification, data gathering, solution engineering. I opened the folder they'd left. The facilities weren't wonderful. They were adequate, at best. Mid-tier pricing, minimal amenities, the kind of place you put someone when you're checking a box, not ensuring comfort. The costs averaged $4,500 a month. I owned my house outright. Property taxes were $6,200 a year. Utilities, maintenance, insurance, another $8,000 annually. Total yearly cost, roughly $15,000. The nursing home would run $54,000 annually. Someone was doing math, but it wasn't math that benefited me. I walked through my house slowly. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, a garage workshop where I'd built Sarah's garden planters and Derek's childhood treehouse. The basement still held boxes of Derek's high school trophies, his college textbooks, things he'd never bothered to retrieve because storage here was free. This house breathed with memories. The height marks on the door frame tracking Derek's growth. The dent in the hallway wall from when he'd learned to ride his bike indoors, despite Sarah's warnings. The kitchen where we'd celebrated birthdays, graduations, life. They wanted to compress all of that into a 12 by 14 room with a shared bathroom down the hall. I went to my workshop. Behind my toolbox, in a fireproof safe bolted to the wall, I kept my important documents: deed to the house, life insurance policies, investment statements, my will, drafted 15 years ago when Sarah was alive, leaving everything to Derek. I'd trusted him then. I'd raised him to be honest, responsible, caring. But people change. Or maybe they just stop pretending. I took out a small notebook, the kind I'd used for project documentation. On the first page, I wrote the date and a title: Observed Behavioral Changes, Derek Marlowe. Then I began documenting, not with emotion, but with precision. Facts, times, witnesses. 3 weeks later, Derek called. "Hey Dad, I'm stopping by tomorrow. Jennifer wants to show you some paperwork. Just routine stuff to make things easier." Easier. There was that word again. They arrived at 10 sharp. This time, the folder was thicker. "We talked to an elder care attorney," Derek said, spreading papers across the table. "These documents just formalize some protections for you." I picked up the first sheet. Durable power of attorney. Comprehensive, irrevocable, effective immediately. "This gives you control of my finances," I said. "Just to help," Jennifer said quickly. "So you don't have to worry about bills and investments. Derek can handle all that." I turned to the next page. Healthcare proxy. Then another. A quit-claim deed, with my signature line highlighted. "Why would I sign my house over to you?" I asked calmly. "You're not," Derek said. "It's a trust transfer. For estate planning. You'd still live here, until I'm in Sunset Gardens." They exchanged a look. Quick. Uncomfortable. "Dad, you're getting forgetful," Derek said again. "These documents protect you from making mistakes." There it was. The phrase, the one they'd been using for months. Each repetition another nail in the coffin of my competence. "What kind of mistakes?" I asked. "Financial ones. People your age get scammed all the time. This way, Derek manages everything and you just relax, relax. While my son drained my accounts to cover his mortgage, I need to think about this," I said. Derek's jaw tightened. "Dad, we don't have time for delays. The attorney fees were expensive. The consultation alone cost." "How much?" I interrupted. He hesitated. "That's not important." "How much, Derek?" $1,500. He said it defensively, as if I were being unreasonable for asking. $1,500 for documents designed to strip me of autonomy. I wondered if he'd paid it, or if he expected me to reimburse him once he had power of attorney. "Leave them," I said. "I'll review everything carefully." Jennifer started to protest, but Derek stood. "We'll be back Friday. Please, Dad, just sign them. It's for your own good. For your own good." The last refuge of people doing you harm. After they left, I didn't get angry. Anger, clouds, judgment. Instead, I did what I'd always done when facing a complex problem. I broke it down into components. Component 1. They believed I was incompetent. Component 2. They wanted control of my assets. Component 3. They were creating legal structures to achieve this. Component 4. I needed to prove competence and protect myself. I called my bank first. The manager, Tom Chen, had handled my accounts for 12 years. "Tom, has anyone attempted to access my accounts recently?" A pause. "Mr. Marlowe, I can't discuss that over the phone. Can you come in?" I could. I drove myself, parallel parked on the first try, and walked into the bank with my ID and account numbers memorized. Tom led me to his office, his expression grave. "Your son called last week," Tom said. "He claimed you'd given him verbal authorization to review your accounts. I told him we'd need written authorization and your presence." "Did he say why?" "He was concerned about unusual transactions. Said you'd been confused about your balance." I hadn't been confused. My balance was $63,417, checking and savings combined. I could recite every deposit and withdrawal from the past 6 months. Tom, I want to place restrictions. No one accesses my accounts but me. Any attempts, I want immediate notification. I'll set that up now. While he typed, I asked, the unusual transactions Derek mentioned. Did he specify? Tom pulled up my account history. He seemed concerned about this. He pointed to a debit from 2 months ago. $940 to Clearwater Home Services. That's my housekeeping service, I said. They do a deep clean monthly. Have for 2 years. Tom nodded slowly. He also mentioned several Amazon purchases around $300 total last month. Books, replacement parts for my workshop tools, a new coffee maker, all itemized on my statements. Tom looked at me, understanding dawning. Mr. Marlowe, I've known you over a decade. You're one of the most organized clients I have. If you're concerned about your son's actions, I am, then I'd recommend documenting everything, and perhaps consulting an attorney of your own. I'd already thought of that. The law office of Patricia Odom was in a renovated Victorian downtown. I'd found her through my former colleague Bill, whose mother had faced similar issues with a greedy nephew. Patricia was in her 50s, sharp-eyed, with the steady demeanor of someone who'd seen family ugliness strip away all illusions about blood being thicker than water. Tell me everything, she said. I did. Chronologically, precisely, with dates and quotes. I showed her Derek's documents. Her expression hardened. This power of attorney is extremely aggressive, she said. Once signed, it's nearly impossible to revoke without proving coercion, which is difficult when the person claiming you need help is your own son. What would happen if I signed? Derek would control everything. Your accounts, your property, your medical decisions. He could sell your house, move you to a facility, and you'd have limited recourse. Can we prevent this? Yes. She pulled out a fresh legal pad. We create airtight protections, advance directives specifying your wishes, a revocable living trust with you as trustee, healthcare proxy naming someone you trust, not Derek, and most importantly, a comprehensive competency evaluation from a physician. Why a doctor? Because if Derek tries to claim you're incompetent, we have recent medical evidence proving otherwise. It neutralizes his primary argument. Over the next week, I followed Patricia's instructions meticulously. Dr. Morrison, my physician of 20 years, performed a full cognitive assessment. I scored perfectly. He documented it in detail. I met with Patricia twice more, signing documents that protected rather than pillaged. My new healthcare proxy was Bill, my colleague. My trust designated my estate. One more thing, Patricia said at our final meeting. When they come back, don't confront them alone. I'll be there. Will they expect that? She smiled slightly. No, which is why it'll work. Friday arrived with heavy clouds, the kind that made the house feel smaller. I spent the morning in my workshop, but I wasn't building anything. I was remembering. Derek at 8, handing me tools while I fixed the porch railing. Derek at 16, asking advice about his first girlfriend. Derek at 25, calling from across the country just to talk. When had that person disappeared? Or had he ever really existed? At 2 o'clock, Derek's car pulled into the driveway. He and Jennifer walked up the path, their confidence visible in their stride. They thought today was the day. Signatures, notarization, control, transferred. I opened the door before they knocked. Dad. Derek's smile was wide, practiced. Ready to finalize everything? Come in, I said. They entered. Jennifer immediately moving toward the dining table, pulling documents from her bag. She had a notary stamp. She'd come prepared for immediate execution. Before we start, I said, I invited someone to join us. Derek's head snapped up. Who? The doorbell rang. I opened it to Patricia Odom, briefcase in hand, expression professionally neutral. This is my attorney, Patricia, I said. She'll be reviewing any documents before I sign. The color drained from Derek's face. Jennifer's mouth opened, closed. Opened again. Dad. This is unnecessary, Derek said, his voice tight. We're family. You don't need. I do need, I interrupted. Because family doesn't mean I suspend judgment. Patricia entered, set her briefcase on the table, and looked at Derek and Jennifer with the kind of gaze that had probably won her dozens of cases. I'm here to ensure Mr. Marlowe's interests are protected, she said calmly. Shall we review what you've brought? Jennifer pushed the documents toward her, defensive. These are standard estate planning tools. We consulted an attorney. Patricia scanned the first page, then the second. Her expression didn't change, but I saw her jaw tighten slightly. This power of attorney is comprehensive and irrevocable, she said. Mr. Marlowe, signing this would give your son complete control over your finances with no oversight mechanism. That's not true, Derek said. It's just to help him. The document says otherwise. Patricia pointed to a clause. This allows the attorney, in fact, your son, to make gifts to himself, sell property, and close accounts without your consent or notification. We wouldn't do that, Jennifer snapped. Then why include the provision? Patricia's voice was steel wrapped in silk. Derek stood abruptly. Dad, are you really going to let some lawyer turn you against your own son? I'm not turning against anyone, I said quietly. I'm protecting myself. From what? He was getting angry now, the mask slipping. From family? From people who actually care about you? From people who've been documenting my supposed incompetence for months, I said. Silence. Heavy and damning. I don't know what you're talking about, Derek said, but his voice wavered. I stood, walked to my bookshelf, and pulled out my notebook, the one I'd been keeping since their first visit. March 7th, I read. Derek and Jennifer arrive unannounced. Suggestion made that I'm getting forgetful because I took 30 seconds to locate my keys. March 22nd, Derek mentions to neighbor Mrs. Patterson that he's worried about me living alone, asking her to report any concerns. April 3rd. From. Cross. From. Stop, Derek said. I didn't. April 3rd. Jennifer researches nursing homes, brings brochures without asking if I want to move. April 15th. Derek calls my bank, claiming I'm confused about my accounts, attempting to gain access. May 2nd. I said stop! Derek's face was red now, his composure shattered. May 2nd, I continued calmly. Derek brings power of attorney documents, tells me I'm making mistakes, says signing is for my own good. I closed the notebook. I haven't forgotten anything, Derek. I've documented everything. Jennifer looked at Derek, panic flickering across her features. We were just trying to help. Help? My voice stayed level, but something harder edged into it. You were trying to convince everyone, including me, that I'm incompetent. Why? What do you need that badly? Derek said nothing, but his eyes darted to Jennifer. A tell. In poker, in engineering, in life, there's always a tell. How much do you owe? I asked. That's none of your business, Jennifer hissed. How much, Derek? My son sank into his chair, the fight draining out of him. $140,000. Between the second mortgage, credit cards, Jennifer's student loans, $140,000. More than twice what my house was worth. And you thought if you could get me into a home, sell my house, access my accounts, we're drowning, Dad. Derek's voice cracked. We're losing everything. I just thought, you don't need all this space. You don't need this much money in the bank. You're alone. And we're entitled? I finished. He flinched. Patricia spoke into the silence. Mr. Marlowe has made his own arrangements. His affairs are in order, his competence documented by his physician, and his estate will be distributed according to his wishes, which I can assure you do not include signing away his autonomy. You're cutting me out, Derek said, looking at me with something like betrayal. Your own son. I'm protecting myself, I corrected. From my own son. The distinction seemed to break something in him. Jennifer gathered the documents with shaking hands. Derek stood slowly, like a man who'd aged a decade in an hour. At the door, he turned back. I never meant to hurt you, but you were willing to, I said. And that's what I'll remember. They left. The house settled into quiet again, but it was a different quiet. Cleaner somehow. Patricia packed her briefcase. You did well. I feel like I lost my son. Mr. Marlowe. With respect, you lost your son the moment he decided you were worth more as a signature than a father. After she left, I sat in Sarah's chair, the one by the window overlooking the garden. The roses she'd planted were blooming, red and defiant against the coming evening. My phone buzzed. A text from Bill. Poker night tomorrow. You in? I texted back. Deal me in. Life would continue. Not the way I'd hoped. Not with family dinners and grandchildren visiting their grandfather. But with dignity. With autonomy. With the right to live in my own house, on my own terms. I'd spent 43 years building things that flew. Now I'd built something else. A boundary. Not a wall, but a door with a lock. And I held the only key. The next morning, I woke early and made coffee. The house was quiet, but not empty. It held me, and my memories, and the future I'd chosen rather than the one chosen for me. I walked to my workshop and started a new project. A bench for the garden, solid oak, built to last. Something Sarah would have liked. The wood smelled fresh. The tools felt good in my hands. And somewhere in the precision of measurement, the satisfaction of a clean cut, I found what I'd been defending all along. Not money, not property, myself. 3 months passed. Derek called twice, left voicemails I didn't return. Jennifer sent an email, apologetic and vague, which I deleted. Bill's wife mentioned seeing them at church, looking strained. I felt no satisfaction in their struggles, but no guilt either. I'd offered to help them years ago when the debt first started, suggested financial counseling, offered to cover a few months' expenses. Derek had declined. Pride still intact then. Pride doesn't pay mortgages, but apparently, fathers' houses do. I settled into a routine. Breakfast at 6, workshop projects in the morning, lunch with Bill on Wednesdays, poker on Fridays. Mrs. Patterson from next door started joining me for coffee on Sunday mornings, our conversations ranging from neighborhood gossip to her grandson's college plans. You seem lighter, she said one morning. I am, I said, and meant it. In June, I received a letter, not from Derek, but from an attorney I didn't know. The firm represented Derek and Jennifer in Chapter 7 bankruptcy proceedings. The letter informed me, as next of kin, that they'd listed my potential support as an asset. I called Patricia. Can they do that? I asked. They can list anything. Doesn't mean they'll get it. You have no legal obligation to support an adult child. I'll send a response making that clear. She did. I never heard about it again. July brought heat, and the kind of long evenings where the garden glowed golden. I'd finished Sarah's bench and placed it under the oak tree where we'd scattered her ashes. Sometimes, I sat there with morning coffee, talking to her the way I used to. I think you'd understand, I told her. About Derek. About all of it. The wind moved through the leaves, and I chose to believe it was agreement. On a Tuesday in August, my doorbell rang at 6 p.m. I wasn't expecting anyone. Through the window, I saw Derek standing on the porch, alone, hands in his pockets. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. Dad, he said, can we talk? About? About me being an asshole. I almost smiled. Almost. You drove an hour to tell me that? I drove an hour to apologize. He looked different, thinner, tired, but something in his eyes was clearer. We lost the house, had to move into an apartment. Jennifer's working 2 jobs. I'm doing contract work. He paused. It's humbling. I imagine it is. I wanted you to bail us out. When you didn't, I was angry. Told Jennifer you'd gotten selfish in your old age. He laughed, bitter. Took me 3 months to realize you weren't selfish. You were smart. And what changed your mind? Bankruptcy attorney asked about my relationship with my father. I said it was complicated. He said, did you try to take his house? Like it was the most obvious grift in the world. Derek looked at his shoes. I told him no, but we both knew I was lying. I leaned against the doorframe. Why are you really here, Derek? Because I owe you an apology. A real one. Not one that comes with asking for money or help or forgiveness. Just, I'm sorry. For treating you like an ATM instead of a person. For trying to convince you and everyone else that you were losing it. For being willing to put you in a home so I could pay off credit cards. His voice cracked. I'm sorry, Dad. I studied my son. 42 years old, finally growing up. I appreciate you saying that. Do you forgive me? Someday, I said. Not today. He nodded, accepting it. That's fair. Derek? Yeah. The debt. The bankruptcy. You'll come through it. You're smart when you're not being desperate. But don't come to me for money. If you need advice, if you need someone to talk to, call. But not for money. I understand. And if you ever try to tell anyone I'm incompetent again, we're done. Permanently. I won't. I promise. He left after that, and I watched his car disappear down the street. I didn't feel reconciled, but I felt heard. Sometimes that's enough. I went back to the workshop and pulled out my notebook. On a fresh page I wrote, August 14th. Derek apologized. No demands attached. Progress noted. Trust not restored. But door not permanently closed. Engineering taught me that some structures can be repaired. Others need to be rebuilt from foundation up. I didn't know yet which category my relationship with Derek fell into, but I had time to find out. That night, I sat on Sarah's bench and watched the stars emerge. The house behind me glowed warm in the dusk. My house, my sanctuary, my choice. Somewhere in the quiet, I heard Sarah's voice from years ago. Something she'd said when Derek was struggling in college. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is let someone hit bottom. If you keep catching them, they never learn to land. I hadn't let Derek hit bottom. I just refused to throw myself underneath him to cushion the fall. And maybe that was the same thing. As summer faded into fall, I found myself thinking less about what I'd lost and more about what I'd kept. My independence, my dignity, my home. The neighborhood kids started showing up at my workshop on Saturdays, asking if I could help with school projects. I taught them to measure twice, cut once, to respect tools and materials. Mrs. Patterson called me a good influence. I called it staying relevant. Bill retired in October, and we started a tradition of Thursday morning breakfast at the diner on Route 9. Other retirees joined us. We talked about everything and nothing. No one asked about Derek. Everyone knew the story by then. Small-town networks being what they are. One morning, Bill's nephew joined us, fresh out of law school, full of ideas. We talked about estate planning, about living trusts, about the importance of protecting yourself even from people you love, especially from people you love. I added. The nephew took notes. Mind if I use your situation as a case study? Obviously anonymized. Use it, I said. If it helps one other person avoid what I went through, it's worth it. Derek called on Thanksgiving. Asked if he could visit for an hour. No Jennifer. No agenda. I said yes. He brought pie from the bakery Sarah used to love. We ate it in the kitchen, conversation stilted but genuine. He told me about his new job, about Jennifer going back to school for nursing, about how they were learning to live smaller, smarter. We're paying off the debt, he said. $2,800 a month. 43 months to clear. That's good, I said. And meant it. I think about what I tried to do, Derek said quietly. How close I came to taking everything from you. It makes me sick. Then don't do it again. I won't. Before he left, he paused at the door. I know I don't deserve it, but maybe next Thanksgiving we could do this again? Maybe, I said. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was possibility. After he left, I cleaned up the pie plates and made myself tea. I sat in Sarah's chair and looked out at the garden, now dormant for winter, waiting for spring. I'd spent 67 years learning how things worked. Machines, systems, structures. But the past year taught me something else. Boundaries aren't walls. They're blueprints for relationships that work. They're not about keeping people out. They're about defining the terms of letting people in. Derek had violated those terms. He'd have to earn his way back across the threshold. And maybe he would. Maybe he wouldn't. Either way, I'd be fine, because I'd learned the most important engineering principle of all. The strongest structures are the ones that can stand alone. My house stood solid. My accounts were protected. My mind was sharp, and I stood in the center of it all, not as someone who'd won a battle, but as someone who'd defended the right to live his own life on his own terms. That wasn't revenge. That was survival. And some days, that was enough.